All right, second take. Hello everyone. Welcome to the shot I promised you. Ooh. Like I said in the second episode, these will be smaller, more condensed episodes. We won't cover as broad. I won't cover as broad a topic, or very probably mostly it will be me. I am Clayton. If this is your first introduction to us, welcome. This is the Academic Alehouse. We publish a podcast every Monday. And we'll cover a broad range of topics from whatever the hell we want. Our tagline is basically two history majors get drunk and solve the world's problems. Now, that happens, we have to take the shot and feel the burn as it slides down our throat. So, on Saturday, this past Saturday, two mass shootings occurred. One in El Paso, Texas, and one in Dayton, Ohio. The casualties are widely known, and any event like this is absolutely horrific. As far as we are aware, it looks like the El Paso mass shooting was committed by and influenced by white supremacy. He published a manifesto on 8chan, and while I have not read the manifesto, it is very much full of white supremacist talking points. It's lowering immigration, and the continued shifting demographics of the American populace. He picked his target as a source of fear-mongering, basically. This was, in my opinion, and in the FBI's opinion, by all appearances, an act of domestic terrorism. The Dayton shooter is a bit more nebulous. While we are aware he was very left-leaning, in fact, he was a proud supporter of Antifa, and supported Elizabeth Warren in the coming election, we do not know if his ideology motivated him to commit this act. Right. Now, the arguments from both sides are really irrelevant. The left continues to call for censorship, the banning of white supremacy, the criminalization of opinions they don't agree with. Reza Aslan, who some of you may know, some of you may not know, but he's a prominent left-wing figure, basically said on Twitter that anyone who supported Trump and Trump himself were supporters of white supremacist terror and should be eradicated. This is disturbing. And I'm happy, actually, because sort of the left is showing its hand at this point. They don't really have anything to say, which is why we can ignore them. But turning to the right, they don't have anything better. Their best obfuscation in this time is video games caused it. It's video games' fault. A starkly untrue statement. A ridiculous notion from the outset. In all honesty, both sides do not have arguments worth listening to at this point. Because either it's a scapegoat or an obfuscation, or they're going to blame the means by which these men achieved their death count. which again, when looking at the on a global scale, is easily disproven, that is easily blown away. But I think the real issue is that guns aren't the issue. This is not a problem we can legislate away by attacking guns or attacking the Second Amendment or doing anything like that. It didn't matter who had guns and who didn't in this situation, in these two scenarios. Because both sides, at least one, possibly both, were motivated and inflamed by being radicalized by the media. The media, who continually report that America is under assault by white supremacists. The media who continually turn even the most minor of right-wing opinions, of even center-left opinions at this point, into cries of hate and racism and white supremacy. Have radicalized their own base to such a wild degree that they now control Antifa, the most extreme far-left organization you can find. They now control a city in Oregon. Then on the right, you have the white nationalists and white supremacists and racists and whatnot, who continually get new members because even the most center-left of opinions is demonized. So the slightly further right people are suddenly standing in agreement with not necessarily actually standing in agreement with the far extreme right. They are told, hey, these people are a danger to you. We can protect you. And eventually these people become radicalized. And this is how... And the left and the right see this as bad. Well, the sane people on the left and the right see this as bad. And both, especially at a government and media level, wish to censor it. They wish to get rid of it. They wish to hide it from the public view for the safety of the children. The issue is when you coddle someone, when you remove stimuli, they don't know how to react, which means it comes down to two central ideas. They will either run from the stimuli, the flight, or they will attack the stimuli, fight. Because people will not know how to react to ideas being presented to them. Ideas that may seem to them to be radical or insane, they won't react very well. And this means that censorship is not the key. So how do we solve this? By defanging and de-radicalizing both sides. It's because the ideology is the source here. By defanging and de-radicalizing both sides, we cut down on the violence. By and large, there's not a doubt in my mind that if we can pull these people back from the brink of radicalization, that we will see lower rates of violence from both sides. But there's a secondary issue to this. The radicalization of young white men. who, by and large, are being paid a disservice by our society. Young white men nowadays feel like outcasts. They are, or especially among millennials, friendless. They have no real relationships to speak of. So they're lacking in companionship. They feel alone. And so when one feels alone, like they're an outcast, it is much easier to form radical opinions. And not just radical opinions, but to become very extreme in your radical opinions. And we, as a society, as writ large, are pushing young white men to the brink. The Garlic Festival shooter, who was at some point, allegedly, asked, "Why are you doing this?" His only response was, "Because I'm angry." Now, before you rear back in horror at the idea of someone just being angry, that just anger isn't a justification for what he did, think about it this way. How angry would you have to be? How frustrated with your mere existence would you have to be to step over that line? To accept the reality that who the hell cares what these people think of me? I want to watch them suffer like I suffered. That's not I stubbed my toe or someone pissed me off at work kind of anger. That's the anger that builds on itself. It's the kind of anger that starts when you're super young and just builds and builds and builds, and because it has nowhere to go, or because it cannot be expressed, it explodes. Now, most of the time, this explosion is self-inflicted, and these young men who have this sort of anger or fall into depression, and they kill themselves. Sometimes, though, they lash outward. And this is what happened to what I believe motivated these three different shooters. Ideology played a part. But extremist ideology is only ever half the battle. The disenfranchisement of young white men is going to continue to cause incidents like this. It's going to continue to cause families to be torn apart by suicide. It's going to continue to cause young men to either lash out at themselves or lash out at the world. And the issue is, when young men lash out at the world, people very often, as exampled, die. I think in order for us as a society to stop the disenfranchisement of young white men, we must first be able to acknowledge that young white men are human, They are deserving of just as much respect as we would give anybody else. And that demonizing any group for the color of their skin or their genitals is wrong. And that's really all I've got. I hope you enjoyed this shot. I hope it burned going down. Join us Monday when we publish a full-length episode of the Academic Alehouse. I will then be joined by Ryan. Thank you for listening, and have a nice day.
The podcast you just heard was made using Anchor. Ever thought about making your own podcast? Anchor makes it really easy for anyone to get started. It's a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing podcasts. Best of all, it's 100% free. Sign up now at anchor.fm/new. That's anchor.fm/new to get started.